everyone, I'm Marta Riggins. I'm the Global Brand Marketing Director for LinkedIn Talent Solutions. Welcome back to the Alexa studio. I'm so sorry we had some technical difficulties, but I'm so excited to be sitting here with Kimberly Bryant, founder and CEO of Black Girls Code. Thank you for being here, Kimberly.
Thank you for having me.
I've been kicking off every interview with the same question, so I'm going to ask it to you.
Sure.
What career aspirations did you have when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, it's funny. When I was a kid, I really wanted to be a lawyer. So at the time when I grew up, there was a show on TV called Perry Mason.
Of course.
And I would watch this show like after school and just like have these dreams about being in the courtroom. So it's kind of ironic that I didn't end up anywhere near a courtroom.
Yeah,
my final career
very
choice.
different path.
Very much so. Very much
Wow.
so.
So today, you're going to speak about the importance of recognizing our innate power to become change agents in our own lives and the lives of others. How and when did you recognize this power within yourself?
Well, I always say that, my journey to founding Black Girls Code was really accidental. It was more driven by me wanting to create a better world for my daughter as I saw her going into the field of engineering, because I never thought she would be that. I mean, I thought she would be an artist or a vet or all the other things she talked about. But when it was, obvious that she actually may be following in my footsteps, my mom instincts kicked in immediately.
Yeah.
And I knew that, I had to do something to kind of like at least make it a bit easier for her, or perhaps at least help her to create a community that could be there for her when I couldn't.
Wow. We talk a lot in our industry about potential in others. It's something that recruiters have. It's kind of an innate thing. You don't go to college to become a recruiter.
Yes.
And so I'm curious, how do you identify potential in others, and what advice would you give to recruiters who are trying to identify potential in talent?
For me, potential really starts with a passion and really finding folks that are passionate about whatever it is that they're doing and really playing to those strengths. I think a lot of times at managers, the tendency is to highlight the negative pieces and where there are gaps in what people can do and where they actually perform. But I think we get just as much benefit if we follow where their passions are and really accelerate and emphasize what they already do well and the things that they love. And I found as I've grown as a manager, when I focus on the positives and really help people build from that, we can minimize those things where there's room to grow.
Yeah, I love that. What are some basic ways that you think people can overcome their own biases, right? Like, how are we going to close the gaps in the workforce, but specifically in tech?
Yeah, I talk about this a lot, and I think the very first step in terms of bias breaking is recognizing that we all have them. So when we see these images on TV and the conditioning that we've had in our environments, it creates a tendency to have a bias. It's a normal reactive tendency and in many ways a defense mechanism. But I think the first element of being able to get past that, get to the other side of your bias, is recognizing that you have it, understanding when it comes into play for you and whatever your role is, especially within an organization, and then really having some solid processes and procedures to work around it.
Yeah.
I'm seeing more companies start to do lots of training on bias, and I think that's the first step. But it really, for that to be truly effective, processes have to be built which identify ways to mitigate the bias that will inevitably come to the table.
I agree completely. When I was at Pandora and I was leading employer branding and working on employee experience, we definitely built bias training into everything. Everything from how do you think about it as spotting at the candidate experience when you're recruiting to how do you onboard people.
Absolutely.
And then all throughout the employee life cycle, like manager training, everything, because it doesn't stop. It's something you have to continually work on.
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, I think that's part of the process, is really understanding how it will evidence itself at different steps and different paths and at different times. Maybe it's at promotion, and understanding how that bias kicks in there. But then really having some solid executional actions that you can take within the workforce to identify the bias and create a different pathway.
Yeah, absolutely. So you work with young girls, and I'm curious, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give your 12-year-old self?
Have no fear, or have less fear. I think when I grew up, I really had this fear, not necessarily a fear of failing, but a fear that I wouldn't succeed, right? So I think for me, it kind of goes back to my upbringing and being brought up in a house where I had this, phenomenal older brother and trying to follow in his footsteps and, do all the right things so that I could be as successful as I believed he was. And in ways that was a hindrance, right? Because sometimes I was afraid to move forward and make certain choices because of fear. What if this didn't succeed?
Yeah.
And I think as I look back over the past 6 years with Black Girls Code, if I let the fear of the unknown stop me, we wouldn't have been here today. We wouldn't have impacted the lives of, thousands literally of girls. And I think if there's one thing that I hope the girls that come through our program can embrace is that embracing that path forward and not letting fear stop them from anything it is that they want to do.
Absolutely, because then there's no risk taking.
There's no risk.
No innovation.
Like just
there's
jump,
no change.
right?
And there's no change agents at all, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What is the best career advice that you have ever received, and who was it that gave it to you? Where did it come from?
Yeah, so I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I always love to tell people that. And this is the home of FedEx, as well as many other wonderful things. But one of my very first internships was in the HR office at Federal Express, right out of high school, before I was going to college. And the manager of the department, he saw me like coming in early, working really hard, and he pulled me to the side one day and was like, Kimberly, I think you have lots of potential, and I want you to know you never should have lunch alone. Like, never have lunch alone. You need to be networking. You need to always go to lunch with someone, build your network. This is very important. So now, as a high school student, I was like, what is he talking about? I definitely don't want to be having a meeting at lunch. I want to get out of here.
Yeah, totally.
I didn't really get it then. But as I went on to college and when I started my career, that was the best advice I ever got, because one of the things that has served me better than anything else is having a really strong and vibrant network.
Absolutely.
And that's something that you build step by step over time. And it's allowed me to do so many things that I never imagined would have been possible for me.
Yeah.
And just understanding the power of networking and having that lunch or having coffee was the best piece of career advice I ever received.
Yeah, that is. So everybody, never have lunch alone.
Never have
Network.
lunch alone.
Network your face off.
Yes.
I think that's such sound advice. What is your favorite interview question to ask candidates?
I love to ask candidates, what's the hardest thing you've ever done or the hardest thing you've ever achieved? I think for me, that question, I'm looking to understand how a person deals with adversity. So when I look back on my career path, especially in a male-dominated industry as a woman engineer and later a woman in the management side of the thing, of the companies that I was in, being able to deal with adversity and obstacles and have resilience allowed me to navigate so many situations. And so when I look at the work that we're doing, really trying to turn the tech industry on its head, so to speak, I want someone that's coming into BGC that has that same level of resilience. So it's really resilience that I'm looking for in an answer. I'm searching for that because I know that it's a long game that we're playing. It's not going to be solved tomorrow. And if the person that's coming to work on our team doesn't see it that way, doesn't have the ability to fall down and get back up and keep going, we'll never reach our goal.
I think that's such a smart question. The one that I love to ask people is, what's the biggest misperception about you?
I love that.
I think the test for EQ, and it's sort of like you engage. There's no right or wrong answer.
I love it.
How aware are you, right?
I love it.
Like for me, I would say, if someone asked me that, I think I'm really goofy and I like humor, but humor is my coping mechanism, and it's where I find resilience.
I love it.
So, yeah.
I love that you had that one in as an engineer. Like, I want to know what problem is solved. But I think both are very important, right?
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
think that this next generation is the one that's going to get it there. The ones that have that high level of EQ and the ability to problem solve. And I think
agree completely.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
thank you for all the hard work you're doing. I am such a fan of your organization and you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
You're
and
very welcome.
everyone, thank you for joining us in the All Access studio.